Monsieur le Président, je vous remercie avec toute votre équipe, mais j'ai besoin, avant de donner la parole aux collègues, d'une clarification. Parce que parmi les griefs portés contre moi, on parlait de fausses allégations. J'ai le budget du Parlement panafricain, budget de fonctionnement 12 405 995, budget programme 8 392 526. Et dans ce budget de fonctionnement, il est divisé comme ceci. Dépenses du personnel, A plus B, 10 146 633. Et mission hospitalité et mission officielle, 1 304 395. Ce qui fait un total de 11 451 028. Est-ce que vous pouvez me confirmer ça, Monsieur le Président?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, if you'll allow me just to check my notes, I will certainly get back to you when whilst I'm answering the rest of the questions, the queries. Thank you.
Dernière question d'information. Vous avez bien relaté la situation du Parlement panafricain face aux organes délibérants. Cette situation, comme vous l'avez soulevé, date depuis votre retour au Parlement à nouveau. Parce que je vous avais trouvé ici en 2007, 2006, 2007, quand j'arrivais ici, vous êtes parti et quand vous êtes revenu, tout ce qu'on avait comme avantage avait disparu. Ça avait été enlevé par le COREP. Et que ce n'est qu'en 2015 qu'on a recommencé avec de petites indemnités qui malheureusement aussi ont été attaquées par le COREP. Je vous souhaiterais que vous clarifiez ça aux honorables membres. Que nos relations avec le COREP et le Conseil exécutif, comme vous l'avez dit, il faut que les ministres des Affaires étrangères soient passés par une assemblée pour comprendre les problèmes qu'on a ici. Quand un budget est de 12 millions, budget de fonctionnement, et qu'on enlève 11 millions, la plupart de nos commissions ici, si le budget programme est différent du budget de fonctionnement. Le budget programme est alloué quand on accepte votre programme. Si le programme n'est pas accepté, il n'y a pas l'argent. C'est pour cette raison que la plupart des commissions ici n'arrivent pas à fonctionner, parce que parfois on ne trouve pas de l'argent. Je souhaiterais que le président nous clarifie ça quand il va donner des réponses. Maintenant, le débat général est ouvert. On avait une autre présentation. Pardon? Il y a une autre présentation. Ah, il y a une autre présentation. Présentation de la proposition de développement de la double taxation. J'invite l'honorable James Gony, vice-président de la vice-président de la Commission des finances et des affaires monétaires, à faire sa présentation. Honorable Gony.
Your Excellency the President, members of Bureau, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen. Please allow me to present the report of the Committee on Monetary and Financial Affairs on the proposed model double taxation agreement in Africa. The context. Having observed that the African continent continues to lose revenue through illicit financial flows due to badly designed treaties and limited treaty networks, and having learned about ATAF model, DTA, that would address the identified gaps, the committee convened a two-day meeting from the 29th to 30 April 2019 to familiarize themselves with the model. The ATAF Secretariat presented the model to both the members of the Finance Committee together with their colleagues from the Audit Committee and the technical team of the PAP Secretariat. The African Union Commission was also represented in the discussion at the level of AUC, Department of International Law, and provided extensive discussion. The background: the African Tax Administration Forum, ATAF, in collaboration with the Tax Justice Network Africa, for 2 consecutive years organized a 3-day capacity development seminar on illicit financial flows, targeting members of parliament drawn from across Africa. The aim of the training workshops was to assist and support African parliamentarians to engage more effectively in policy and legislative discourse on stemming IFFs and improving domestic resource mobilization. The engagement started in 2017, and it is expected to continue under the support of the African Development Bank, ADB. Further to equipping parliamentarians, during the last engagement in 2018, it was noted that increasingly the outflows from Africa are as a result of weak legislation, as well as fully negotiated and signed double taxation treaties. The said combination persistently continued to facilitate the erosion of the continent's resources. Arising from the 2018 parliamentarians' engagement, it was recommended that ATA's model agreement for the avoidance of double taxation and the prevention of fiscal evasion with respect to taxes on income would likely address the gap if adopted as a continental tool to assist countries to drop, negotiate, and renegotiate their existing tax treaties. It is important to clarify that ATAF, through its membership, which is 38 African countries now, was able to develop a model double taxation agreement in 2015. 22 countries participated during the initial drafts, and the model has been revised twice, with the latest revision being in February 2019. Mr. President, the partnership between Africa Tax Administration Forum and Pan-African Parliament, in a bid to eliminate illicit financial flows from Africa through the strengthening of tax legislation in Africa, the ATAF and the Pan-African Parliament signed a 5-year collaborative memorandum of understanding in November 2018 in Kigali, Rwanda. The MOU set out the cooperative efforts to provide capacity building initiative to members of parliament, whilst echoing the fundamental role of advocacy played by parliaments. It further recognizes the significant role of tax systems in Africa through exchanges, knowledge dissemination, and capacity development in the active contribution to the regional and global tax agenda to foster inclusive economic growth and welfare of the African people. It further stressed the role of the ATAF in providing research and technical expertise on tax matters, particularly proficiency drafting of model laws and treaties. The MOU was established to provide a framework for effective collaborative on activities of common interest, particularly to establish a general framework of cooperation for economic and tax policy administration within the context of Africa's Agenda 2063 and the global SDGs 2030. To this end, the parties sought to formalize a strategic partnership in the interest of domestic resource mobilization for economic development. Cross-border tax challenges in Africa. ATAF's Tax Research Department continues to observe that the corporate tax yield in Africa falls below that of value-added tax and personal income taxes. ATF's African Tax Outlook for 2018 places this at 15%, while VAT and FIT pitch 34% and 20% respectively. These statistics place doubts on whether corporations in Africa are paying the right tax or their fair share. The outcome is unfavorable to the emerging economies in Africa, while the number of corporations, and in particular multinational enterprises, are on the rise. To achieve its development goals, Africa needs to enhance its domestic resource mobilization ability by effectively and efficiently taxing all economic units in a fair and equitable manner. Thus, there is an urgent need to address the low corporate tax yield, seeing it causes two issues. First, inequitable tax system where rich multinational enterprises pay less tax at the expenses of the poor citizens. Second, low tax revenue collections in the continent. Further, Mr. President, the report by the high-level panel on illicit financial flows from Africa, led by former President His Excellency Thabo Mbeki of South Africa, shows that Africa continues to lose a significant proportion of its resources largely through transfer pricing and the related cross-border dealing of multinational enterprises. The key recommendation to address this remains to ensure that transactions are consistent with the arm's length principle. The arm's length principle simply means that conditions imposed or made by related parties in their commercial or financial relations should be consistent to those made between independent parties. Any profit which accrues as a result of other identified inconsistencies therefore ought to be determined and taxed accordingly. To compound this, ATAP, through its technical assistance program, continues to observe various cross-border taxation issues that Africa faces. These include, but are not limited to, unfavorable tax treaties, weak domestic laws to address transfer pricing, limited exchange of information networks, excessive tax incentives, and limited technical capacity to handle cross-border transaction of technical, sophisticated multinational enterprises, MNEs. Mr. President, what are the benefits of the ATAF model DTA to African states? Reality demonstrates that most African countries do not have tax treaties with their real or potential investment and trade partners. Often the tax treaties are with countries where there are no prospects of reasonable levels of trade or flow of investment, and worse still, some are with tax havens or low tax jurisdictions, exposing them to the risk of tax avoidance through themselves and or the treaty partner. Ultimately, these transactions lead to erosion of their tax base. This approach is not appropriate since tax treaties are supposed to promote trade and investment between countries. The African situation is compounded by old tax treaties dating back in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. The tax treaties are outdated and largely allocate more taxing rights to the resident states, which are developed countries, at the expense of the source states, which are developing countries, where Africa is. Based on the above scenario, Africa needs appropriate double taxation treaties, DTAs, to promote trade and investment between African states as well as other continents. DTAs remove barriers to cross-border investments and trade through elimination of double taxation, provision of certainty in tax treatment. In support of domestic resource mobilization, DRM, they prevent fiscal evasion through exchange of information, improve tax collection, and provision of dispute resolution mechanism. Important for investment is DTAs override the domestic tax law provisions, which are changed from time to time, often during every budget cycle, hence providing the stability that is key to businesses. DTAs also eliminate judicial double taxation, where the same taxpayer is taxed twice by the two states on the same income, by requiring the resident states to eliminate the double taxation in case where the source state has the primary taxing rights. This opportunity encourages cross-border trade and investment. ATAF has observed that most of the African countries have a very limited tax treaty network. Some countries have as low as 3 tax treaties, while others have about 53 tax treaties. On average, most of the countries have about 12 tax treaties. This adversely affects their ability to exchange information to support tax audit and compliance monitoring. Therefore, enhancing in the tax treaty network would empower countries in this regard. The suggested ATAP model DTA is not legally binding to African states, but rather provides best practice model for states when negotiating tax treaties with other countries, particularly developed countries with better negotiating capacity. The use of this model will promote a consistent approach in Africa, leading to increased tax certainty and a better investment and trade environment. The model would make DTA negotiations much easier in Africa, where the general framework and text can easily be agreed upon, and the focus centered on issues such as rates of withholding tax at source, permanent establishment definition, services taxation, exchange of information, and the clear dispute resolution. Your Excellency, the rationale for a continental model DTA. Due to the continued illicit financial flows out of the continent, the tax treaties have been identified as a key cross-border taxation issue in Africa. The development of a model ought to be considered in order to address this. The ATAP model, having been developed through a consultative process within its membership, 38 countries, as I said, present this opportunity. Paramount to note this, that the member states were represented in the meetings by senior policy makers from the tax administrations and the ministries of finance. The meeting sought for consensus on the provision of the model, and member states were at liberty to express reservation where they found relevant. The outcome of these meetings is the present model. The Finance and Monetary Affairs Committee of the Pan-African Parliament, through its engagement with ATAF, decided to advocate for endorsement of this model as a recommended tool to protect Africa's revenue as they embark on sensitizing their colleagues on salient global tax issues and the merits of having stronger tax treaties. This can be done in twofold. As legislators in our own countries responsible for lawmaking, we have platformed through our respective national parliaments to advocate for the incorporation of the DTA in our tax negotiations. Secondly, as continental legislators, we have a wider outreach to advocate for all our AU member states to utilize the model DTA. Your Excellency President, the key elements of the ATAP model DTA and the presentation of ATAP, for your information, was circulated to you last week, which went article by article, and I hope you have read it. It is imperative to note that the document is a model intended to provide best practice in tax treaty negotiation. The objective is to have a common African approach to tax treaties with a view of addressing the highlighted challenges in Africa. There is an internationally accepted structure that DTA models follow, these being models such as that of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, or that of the United Nations model, taxation conventions. For ease of cross-referencing, therefore, the ATAP model DTA also follows a similar structure. The unique feature of the ATAF model DTA stands out as the combination of most appropriate provision for both the UN and OECD models, while including features specific to African environment. Some of these variations in the ATAF DTA models are: one, it has a wider definition of permanent establishment to give source states greater taxing rights of business profits consistent with the approach of African countries. The wider definition covers, among other things, activities connected to exploration or exploitation of natural resources and services provided by individuals. Two, provides taxing rights for all services by including an article for fees for technical services. Three, provides for broader definition of royalties, giving more taxing rights for this passive income. Four, allocates taxing rights to source states in respect of other income not specifically mentioned in a treaty. And five, provides for an arbitration process only if either of the competent authorities so requests in writing. This provides an opportunity to resolve tax disputes while ensuring that the process is under control of the competent authorities. Importantly, Mr. President, the ATAP model DTA also considered and factored the relevant outcomes from the OECD and G20 base erosion and profit shifting BEPS process. For instance, the model has an updated preamble statement. This statement was intended to ensure that the object and purpose of the tax treaty was to eliminate double taxation without creating opportunities for non-taxation or reduce taxation through tax evasion or avoidance. B, updated permanent establishment definition. The updates address issues of artificial avoidance of permanent establishment status through activities of agents, fragmentation of contracts, and the specific exemptions on Article 5.4 of the free base erosion and profit shifting in UN or OECD models. C, updated scope of persons covered. The update addressed the issue of hybrid mismatches where physically transparent entities such as partnerships or trusts may avoid tax in the two partner states or double non-taxation, or end up being double tax but at different levels. D, the updated tiebreaker rule was introduced. The update addressed issue of dual residence of corporations. Such corporations may avoid paying taxes in the two partner states where the pre-BEPS criteria, place of effective management, is used. E, updated provision to qualify for treaty benefits in respect of dividend income, Article 10. The update requires a test of beneficial ownership and minimum shareholding period. F, updated standard for exchange of information and assistance in tax collection. Your Excellency the President, based on the above scope, the model addressed otherwise blatant tax gaps observed in African countries. As a living document, it will be updated from time to time to remain relevant and up to date with international tax developments. The case in point now is the ongoing debate on changes in allocation of taxing rights in the area of digitalization and introduction of new anti-base erosion provisions. Your Excellency the President, honorable members of Pan-African Parliament, the Committee on Monetary and Financial Affairs seek your indulgence and make the following recommendation for your consideration and adoption. This House is invited to consider this report and resolve as follows. 1. Approve the request for the formation of an African model double taxation agreement by the Pan-African Parliament. 2. Mandate the Committee on Monetary and Financial Affairs to to lead the formulation of the proposed draft African Model Double Taxation Agreement and to present it for consideration by plenary. Third, welcome the collaboration with and technical support from African Tax Administrators Forum and African Union Commission, Department of International Law, and request the Committee on Monetary and Financial Affairs to continue collaborating with these institutions and other relevant stakeholders in formulating the proposed draft African Model Double Taxation Agreement. And finally, request the Committee on Monetary and Financial Affairs to ensure that the relevant departments of the African Union Commission, regional economic communities, RECs, national tax management institutions, and civil society organizations are meaningfully involved in the formulation process of the draft African Model Double Taxation Agreement. With this, I so submit, and I thank you very much.